Welcome everyone to our refresher webinar for October. And we're going to be focusing, as you can see, on difficult emotions. And we can't stop the waves of those emotions, but we can learn to surf the waves. I'm Bud Wassell with the Employee and Family Resources Program. And as you know, we do these monthly. So thanks for joining me, and hope you can come again next month. We're also in the middle of a new 6-week class called Mindfulness Strategies for stress resilience. And if you want to join that, I started it actually yesterday. It's a 6-week class, but you could still join. Just let me know, or just go straight to LMS and look for mindfulness strategies, and that'll get you going. So also there's my contact info if you have any follow-up questions, and the Employee and Family Resources phone number and website. So I'm also available to answer any questions about that if you have any of those. So for today, we're going to start with a mindful minute and a mindful kind of internal weather check to get us kind of into the present moment before we jump right into today's topic. So all I'd like you to do is sit comfortably, or you could actually even be standing, and we're going to turn our attention inward. We've been hearing a lot about weather these days, and but we're going to be looking to our internal weather. So turn inside and just notice what the weather is like today. Is it stormy, cloudy, sunny, rainy? What's going on for you weather-wise today? Don't have to analyze it, just notice the way it is. There's no right or wrong. Just be aware. And along with that, you might notice associated thoughts that pop up, opinions about that. There's always that inner commentary going on, and also associated emotions, as well as body sensations. So just kind of doing a quick check. Thoughts, emotions, body sensations, as to how your weather is inside today. And then we might take a deep breath or two to kind of focus our awareness. Maybe relax us a little bit, take our mind off of all that stuff and just focus on the breathing for now. You might feel your body as you're sitting, or whatever position you're in, as a way to be grounded and anchored and centered. And we'll finish that quick mindful minute. So, all right. So that's a way to get started. And hope you're doing well. Hope the weather clears for you. If it's stormy, hope it's not like the hurricanes that are going on. Sound awful to be in those. And we have our thoughts and prayers for those who are affected by them, of course. But we're really today focusing on our own weather patterns and what we can do about the emotions that arise. And so, of course, there are all sorts of emotions from all current events, from the weather that's going on in our world, but also all the other very difficult situations in politics and the wars around the world and climate change. I mean, the list goes on and on. So it can really stimulate a lot of emotional reactions, right? And so today is about trying to notice those, become more mindfully aware of them, and learn how to surf those waves. Before we jump into all that, we are also going to talk a little bit about our mindfulness practices, and this is a refresher webinar, so give you some things to think about to continue and build your practice. But first, how is your practice going? Let me just do that kind of check-in with you. What's working in your formal and informal mindfulness practices, and what gets in the way? And please feel free to use the chat to give me some feedback. We're a relatively small group today, so feel free to unmute if you'd like to do that. Just share a little bit of how it's going. But love to hear how it's going, what's working. Are you able to get a regular time and place to do the practice? Are you doing it most days, for example? Are you doing some informal practices as well? And that's a good way to kind of bring our mindful awareness into those everyday routine activities that we do. You don't have to necessarily sit and do a formal meditation, but you can do an informal practice, right? I'm going to give you some reminders about some of those things that you can be doing throughout the day, but just want to hear how it's going for you. Okay, great. Love this. Formal practice works best for me before checking my phone and email. That's a great comment. And I'm going to just reminds me of what's his name? Jeff Bezos. I heard this on a podcast or something recently. He has a practice that what he does is at the beginning of each day, instead of jumping right into the digital world, all the emails and all those things that zoom us right into all the weather patterns and all the craziness of the outside world, he doesn't use any digital um, phone or any device, and just old fashioned has breakfast with the family, reads the paper, has some good conversation, gets ready for the day that way without having that being overstimulated. Because let's face it, we are kind of overstimulated with all the various ways that we get our information, and it's information overload. So try to use some way to control that. That's important. A couple of other good comments here. Chatter gets in the way of the schedule times. Yeah, so we're going to actually address a little bit of that today because chatter does impose its will on us, and sort of like a pinball machine. Continue to use my Insight timer. Very good. That's a great app as I drive into work. Prior to going to sleep, also, I meditate to relax any stresses of the day. Great. That's a terrific practice. When I remember to do an informal practice, it's helpful as well. Yeah, so that's the key, right? Remembering to do it. And that's what building the habit is all about, so that it naturally surfaces as we do this. Now, this is just, I love this quote. If I do not practice one day, I notice it. If I do not practice a second day, the orchestra notices it. And if I do not practice a third day, the world notices it. And that's Ignacy Jan Paderewski. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. He was a composer and an orchestra leader. So that's his quote, and I think it applies to our mindfulness practices as well. So try to keep up those practices. And here's another reminder from Dr. Rick Hansen. Just one thing, he has a number of things online, but he has a newsletter that he sends out called Just One Thing. So you can look him up and sign up for that if you'd like. Meditation is to the mind what aerobic exercise is to the body. Like exercise, there are many good ways to do it, and you can find the one that suits you best. And we know that it promotes well-being, it's fitness for the brain, and helps train our attention and focus and concentration. And that's what really helps us get the job done, right? So, and return from all those distractions that we have. And I like this last part. The best meditation of all, the one you will do. So find what you like and will stick with. And that's really important because there are so many different types. Somebody mentioned Insight Timer, which I love. It's a great app, but it is like there are thousands of meditations. And so the good thing about the app is that you can make it work for you. You can organize it. You can bookmark things and favorite things. So find your favorites and go back to those. And I think you'll find that you'll want to go back to those. Just reminding you about pauses and mindful pauses, bringing mindful awareness. These are all good informal practices just doing some deep conscious breathing can be helpful. Breathe in, exhale with a sigh, and hold. That's something similar to what's called cyclic sighing. It's very proven to be very good at relaxing us. So if you get kind of like a little triggered, a little stress reaction, either deep breathing or breathe in and then exhale long and slow with a sigh, hold it and breathe in again. Very effective. Hand washing, Purelling, other routine activities, those are all excellent informal practices. You might just pick one, and every time you wash your hands, for example, every time you make a cup of coffee, whatever it is, try to slow down and do it mindfully and pay attention. That's a mindful practice. Savor is to savor the good things, let them sink in, take a little more time with them. Again, slow down and kind of marinate or immerse yourself in them. And the stop practice, remember that one is stop stands for the S is to stop, T is to take a mindful breath or two or three, the O is to observe, kind of like we did in the beginning. Observe thoughts, feelings, and body sensations. And then the P is to proceed from there with that kind of newfound expanded awareness. And when we do that, I know you've seen this before, but I love this quote. To experience peace does not mean that your life is always blissful, but it means that you're capable of tapping into a blissful state of mind amidst the normal chaos of a hectic life. And the more we practice, the more we can do that when we most need it, when we're having one of those crazy, busy, out of control days. So practice, 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 and that'll help you, I think, when you're having one of those days. Mindful eating is, I know this is at lunchtime, so you might even be eating now. If you are, that's fine. Take time to slow down and taste and smell and notice the textures, use all your senses to really enjoy and savor your meal. Try not to multitask. Here are some other tips that you can do, but try not to work and plow right through lunch. There are a couple of links here also for a mindful chocolate and mindful raisin eating exercise. And again, I will post these slides and the recording on Thrive. I'm not always sending these out at this point. So if you want the slides, go to Thrive My Wellbeing. And if you don't know where to find that, just let me know. But you can find that on the intranet, Thrive, and then pick My Wellbeing. I apologize. It's not My Wellbeing. It's under Live and Recorded Resources, which is also under Thrive. And that's where these all go. You'll see the past couple of months there as well. Walking is a great way to pay mindful attention to the lifting and placing of your feet, the movement of the body. If you're outside, you might notice the sounds, the smells, the feel of the sun on your face, the breeze, all those things. You're going to get distracted. Your mind is going to carry you away and, basically time travel. When that happens, that's fine. Just notice that. That's the practice, right? Notice that, bring your attention back and feel the act of walking. You might slow down a little bit. Same with driving. You can even do this with driving. Somebody mentioned that. I do that pretty frequently myself. And obviously you don't close your eyes unless somebody else is driving. But it's another great place to do it and really pay close attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. I think it actually can make you a better driver. Mindful movement, gentle stretching, taking some time to release that tension. Again, slow down when you do these and just really enjoy and let go of the tension. Lots of us are hunched over a computer and we're down in this position and our hands and our shoulders. So take a few minutes every hour if you can to really stretch it out. Also, I want to remind you about some attitudes that can be very helpful. The attitudes on the left there of patience, kindness, acceptance, and non-judging are all so important to our meditation and mindfulness practices. If you want to rewatch those videos, that's a link. It's an active link to Jon Kabat-Zinn talking about the 9 attitudes of mindfulness. And the most important is to be kind to yourself, sort of that half smile of kindness on Mona Lisa here. But remember, if you find yourself criticizing your practices, your mindfulness practices, not doing it enough or not doing it the right way, I mean, there's really no right way. So whenever that inner critic comes up, just remember to give yourself a smile and a pat on the back for the practice that you are doing, and be kind and friendly to yourself. That's so important. So let's turn to working with difficult emotions and just the whole, kind of mess that the world is in. I'm not going to go into that again because I don't want to trigger you, but it is so important to realize that all these things, like we did in the beginning, that we can turn our attention to, our thoughts that come up and the associated emotions that are tied to those, are going to be there. We have all kinds of a whole range of emotions. The basic ones, of course, and some of the difficult ones, anger, for example, or sadness, or fear. Those kinds of emotions can be very difficult and triggered very easily these days. And our natural human tendency is to resist them, to ignore them, suppress them, and to maybe cling on to and hold on to the nice ones. And we always have opinions about them. And sometimes we make them worse by adding in that judgment, those opinions we have about those things. So keep in mind that the waves that are emotional waves, I'll use this sort of image for that, come and go. Our emotions come and go like waves on the ocean. Sometimes they crest and then subside. By the way, this particular part is from the M Life app. There's a very good course on emotional intelligence given by Roger Nolan, and it's I think it's like 4 or 5 pretty brief sessions. So you might check that out if you have the M Life app. So they come and go, they crest, they subside. We can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf the waves of emotion. So what does that mean? Well, like waves, emotions are a form of energy. And you can see them like waves, and they're kind of designed to move us towards action. There's a lot of energy in there. Just like if you're riding a wave, emotions are a wave that ensures our survival. They're important to us, right? Fear motivates us to lock the door at night, take care of our families, for example. Anger can motivate us to speak our truth and to be assertive. Positive emotions motivate us too. Inspiration moves us to be at our best. Love and compassion moves us to care for others. At other times, like waves, they can overwhelm us and we can literally get wiped out. And we might have the energy right then, or the wave is immense and beyond our skill. And at times, the right action might be just to kind of go under the wave and try to just keep our, get our breath and stay present. So we can use the breath mindfully, as we've learned, to stay present and to stay balanced and centered. The other thing to remember is that resisting emotion is sort of like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It's pretty hard to do. It'll inevitably surface in unexpected places. So rather than resist our emotions, we can learn how to float on them or even surf with them. So we can bring awareness to the wave of emotion as it's first forming. And I'll bring up this quote, which is actually from Jon Kabat-Zinn. All of this is really just a way of learning how to manage the inevitable unpredictability of life. In other words, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So I know I've said that a few times, but it's really important. And I think this is one of the most important skills we can learn from our mindfulness practice. A lot of it starts with our thinking and noticing what thoughts come up. Our thoughts often are associated with emotions, but sometimes emotions surface very quickly and intensely, like some of those waves from that last image. So we can learn to surf, even if it's a relatively new skill. We can learn to get on top of the waves and get into the shore and manage those. All right, so let's move to this image, and we'll start our meditation for today. And if you recall, I'm doing just one meditation during these mindfulness refresher sessions now. So we'll focus on first the breath and the body, always good anchors. And an anchor is a great metaphor for stabilizing ourselves, even when there's difficult weather patterns going on. And then we'll move to monitoring in a more open way the thoughts and emotions that are there. And I'll give you some instruction. There will be some brief periods of silence. So when that occurs, take that to just practice what we've just been talking about. And then I'll come back and give you some more guidance before we finish. So let's begin by finding a comfortable position, finding a way to sit or be that's best for your body. This could be in a chair or on the floor or even standing, whatever is best for you. Take a moment to settle in. If your body is tense and you've been sitting still for a long period of time, you might stretch a little bit before you settle into stillness. That's perfectly fine. So if it's helpful to stretch out the shoulders or the neck or the hands or the back, whatever, feel free to do that. And then just begin to find that position, settle into it, feel the weight of the body sink into the chair or the surface beneath you, closing the eyes if you like. You can keep them softly open if you prefer. I would suggest gazing down in front of you at a fixed point, just to minimize any visual distractions if you do that. And again, we'll check in with ourselves. So just checking in to notice how things are in the moment, what thoughts are present, how's the body, what sensations do you notice, and what feelings are apparent right now. And without judgment, see if you can notice those without having those, well, or at least if you have the judgments or opinions about those things, don't get carried away with them. Just let them go. Notice them, let them go, come back to the breath, and we'll now use the breath as an anchor. So feel the sensations of your breathing and really zoom in to just feel the breath moving in and out of the body. Where do you feel the breath most easily? Might be at the nose or the chest or the belly. And just follow the breath in and out at that one spot where you really feel it. And this is our home base or our anchor that we can come back to whenever we need to. Now, our body can also be that. So again, feeling that the body awareness as it's sitting and being anchored in the chair, feeling your feet anchored and grounded on the floor. That can also be an anchor to come back to. I'm going to give you a little bit of silence, and in the silence, what I'd like you to do is just notice thoughts and or emotions as they arise. And sometimes they're linked. So just kind of observing what surfaces in this brief period of silence. What did you notice? Did you notice thoughts? Were you able to kind of step back from them and just notice them floating on by? If not, that's okay, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. Seeing if we can notice thoughts come and go, sort of like clouds in the open sky of your awareness. And in the same way, noticing emotions or an emotion that might be predominant. Just noticing it, not engaging with it, but being a little bit curious about it. And see if you can be aware of it and use that curiosity to notice it without judgment. And notice the thoughts and the emotions come and go like waves while you rest on your stable platform of rest and breathing and the stability of the body as well. If you get really lost in thought, or you kind of go down that rabbit hole, or something stressful perhaps that comes up, that's fine. Reconnect with your breath. That's your anchor. Let it stabilize you. And you might just also notice other distractions as you continue. You might notice an impulse to check the time or an email. See if you can just notice it without reacting to it. So notice it and just let it go. And again, I'm going to give you a brief period of silence to notice what's happening, kind of an open monitoring of thoughts and emotions. Now, again, what did you notice? And were you able to just be aware of it without engaging with it or reacting to it? But if that was the case, that's okay too. But what did you notice? Thoughts and emotions. What was going on in that internal weather pattern? And remember, using the breath as an anchor to stay connected to the present moment and to float on these waves of experience. When your attention wanders, notice what emotions come along with these thoughts. And then invite the attention to come back to the sensations of breathing. And continuing again in silence for a moment or so, floating on the waves of the breath. This is where some of our insights can come in, noticing those thoughts and emotions. You may be aware that there are some repetitive thought patterns or sticky thoughts, they sometimes call them, or thoughts and emotions that kind of do trigger you a little bit. And again, the practice is to kind of notice them and not engage with them, but be curious about them. And remember, learning to float on the waves or surf on the waves of these emotions and thoughts. Now you can let that part go, and let's come back to the anchor of our breath. So let's feel the breathing for a few cycles. If it helps, you might take a couple of longer, deeper breaths. You might want to try to soften and relax, especially if you've noticed some tension build up. And that's the other area that you might explore, is that when we are aware of those thought patterns and those emotions, sometimes it brings in feelings and sensations in the body. Sometimes we might notice it as tension, or we might be aware of it in the stomach or a tightness in the chest. And that's good to notice that and be aware of that, because then you can use the breath. You can use the relaxing part of the breath and letting the body soften. And I think many of you have been doing this for a while, that you can begin to just allow yourself to be relaxed, even when there are some waves going on. So at this point, we'll begin to close out. But before we do, again, just anchoring yourself in the body, bring your attention back to the body sitting, the surface beneath you, the connection with the chair and the ground. If your eyes have been closed, you can open them slowly as we begin to finish, and maybe just move a little bit, stretch a little bit, and perhaps make an intention to bring some of this practice, to bring some of this awareness to the next activities of your day, so that if you know you're going to go into a stressful meeting, for example, or a difficult conversation, or something that might bring on some wave of emotion, you can begin to practice this in real life going forward. So check in as you go forth, noticing thoughts and emotions with this attitude of acceptance, if you can. When you're noticing an emotion, you might want to try riding the wave, either through simply observing the emotion, connecting to the breath and the body, letting it anchor you, and letting yourself float on top of it. And then that will give you some insight, perhaps, and some distance to take some skillful action later on, or when you're ready, or when you've had a chance to kind of stabilize and anchor yourself. All right, so thank you for joining me in the meditation today. And again, that comes from the M Life app on the emotional intelligence class that's part of that. So that app has a lot of good features in it. Love to hear what you thought of that. So again, feel free to use the chat and just give me a word or two of feedback of what you thought about how that was for you. Again, no right or wrong, but just it's a good practice, and like to hear what you think about it, what your experience was. These are related, these quotes, so we are not troubled by things, but by the opinions we have about things. Epictetus, and that's a pretty ancient quote. I think it's over 2,000 years old, somewhere in that time zone. And that's essentially what we do sometimes, right? We experience stressful things. We think about them, our thoughts kind of like build on them, and we begin to ruminate and obsess. And we can learn that with our mindful practice, we don't have to do that. We can let them go. We can come back and anchor ourselves with the breath. And that's essentially what Viktor Frankl is saying in the second quote here is between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that's kind of what I was talking about in taking skillful action later. Often we get triggered and we immediately react. I mean, just think about being in traffic, for example. Traffic seems like it's getting worse and worse in our area. And I was just on the parkway the other day and got triggered several times by other drivers and by lane closures and all those kinds of things that we go with. And it's easy to react and you can feel that. So the trick is to, as soon as you feel that, to begin to then center yourself and learn how to ride the wave rather than automatically respond. And that's that space between stimulus and response that we can begin to tap into. All right, thank you. Just what I needed during this hectic day. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you for that. Feel free to put in any other comments. Love to hear them. I want to remind you about resources on our EFR website. We do have over 30 different types of guided meditations. Here's the link. And we do have the MLife app. Also, other apps that I recommend are Insight Timer, Healthy Minds, or Happier. Happier is the new name of 10% Happier. Apparently, they've changed a bit. It's just called Happier now. There are great podcasts out there. I post all my classes and stuff on my YouTube channel. If you'll see it on this link, or if you just search for my name, you'll see them all. Lots of different playlists at this point. There's the information on the app. You can download it on the Carillon Wellbeing site. And again, we're still doing the phone meditation, so feel free to join me on those. Those are live. I do most of them. Tom, one of my colleagues, does them on Fridays. And there's also a phone number here, which has pre-recorded meditations, 3 of them. See a couple more comments. Good. Glad you like the practice. Did notice the sticky thoughts. Good. And thank you for mentioning that you like the YouTube channel. Good. Used it a few times during travel. That's great. Good. Glad people are getting some use out of that. So at this point, before we close, let me know if you have any questions or thoughts or comments. But I will close with this quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness is about being fully awake in our lives. It is about perceiving the exquisite vividness of each moment. We also gain immediate access to our powerful inner resources for insight, transformation, and healing. So again, sometimes we think of mindfulness and meditation as being soothing and relaxing and calming. And yes, I think we can develop those skills, but not always. Sometimes it brings up the waves, and so that's why I wanted to kind of focus on those today. So thanks for I see your thank yous in the comments. Thank you very much. Glad you found it relaxing. Hope you all have a good day. Appreciate that. I love that comment. Sitting with everything. Great way to put it. Very nice. All right. So I'm going to stop the record. And as I stop that, and if you have any questions about the class I mentioned, I'll be on for a couple more minutes, or if you have any questions about anything. But thank you so much for joining me. Peace be with you, and namaste, and hope you found it helpful. Take good care.
Thank you, Bud.